As Tony said, this is the sixth installment of the Gordon Parks Lecture Series at Wichita State University. And I'm a big believer that often things are not coincidental. And I think the timing of this event on December 8, 2014 is remarkable. Nelson Mandela died December 5, 2013. President Jacob Zuma declared December 8, 2013 to be a national day of prayer and reflection. Gordon Parks was born on November 30, 1912. And it was about this time of year in 2006 when Mr. Parks came home to Kansas for his final resting place. These two great men had so much in common. Both stood for dignity, equality, humility, humanity, and respect. And again, the timing of having Mr. Brand with us to share his story as a part of the Parks Lecture Series really warms my heart. And as we prepare for our conversation tonight, let us consider recent events that have occurred in Fairmount Park, St. Louis, New York City. And I ask that we join in a moment of silence, a moment of contemplation to prepare us for the importance of what we're going to hear tonight. Thank you. For 12 years, Christo Brand was assigned as Mandela's prison guard. He watched the man suffer humility after humility. But over time, he saw the stature of Mandela grow before him. Seeing him suffer the loss of his mother and then son, and still remain strong and true to his beliefs of an equal and free South Africa. Brand was won over by Mandela's charm and authentic concern for others. And in time, he, Christo Brand, became a confidant and even an accomplice to Nelson Mandela. The stories told in this book that we're going to talk about tonight show Brand as a true person of compassion, both with his famous prisoner friend, but also with others who were incarcerated. Told with candor and reverence, Mandela, my prisoner, my friend, is both a personal story of friendship and a moving testament to the dedication, determination, and most of all, humanity exuded by one of the world's great leaders and an ordinary man, his friend, who showed extraordinary decency at a time when it was so rare. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Christo Brand to our stage. Welcome, Christo.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight. Very honored for the invite. And I hope we can serve the community, tell them the truth, tell them the story, and I would be very happy to be with you.
Well, based on what I've seen since you've been here, I'm sure that the audience will be very pleased and very informed. And I'm going to break away from my prepared questions and interview and ask you to open with a story that you've told a couple of times since you've been in Wichita, which I think really indicates a great deal about Mr. Mandela. And so tell us about when President Mandela was walking the beach in the Bahamas.
You know, Mr. Mandela was on holiday in the Bahamas, so he was an early person. 5 o'clock in the morning up, 6 o'clock he take a stroll and a walk. And that morning when he walked on the beach, young couple passed, came to him and he greeted him very friendly. And a lady looked at him. She said, "Sir, you look like Nelson Mandela." Then he looked at her, he said, "Ma'am, I would love to meet that guy myself one day."
Christo, why did you write this book?
Mandela pressurized me. He wanted me to write a book. Then it would take more than 5 years, where every time I say to him, "Mr. Mandela, I'm busy with my notes," and I look at my diaries, and I've got interviews which I put together, and I've made some notes and things. But it was difficult to put my feelings on paper. So a year passed, and then every time when I visit Mandela, I try to avoid the question about my book. And then he put it up again. Then one day he called me, a guy called me, Mr. James Sanders. We helped him with the long walk to freedom. And just the day before, James Sanders phoned me, contacted me, he wanted to see me for an interview. I didn't want to do the interview first because the day before that, Mr. Ahmad Kathrada, which was sentenced with Mandela for life, said to me and to the other ex-political prisoners on Robben Island, "You all give interviews away for the media. The media are running and people write books around you and about you and all that, and they're making money out of you. And you people which are really in a struggle, you people which have a story, personal story, it's been out in the newspapers before you even know it. We must start stopping doing that and charge the people." Then I was not feeling for that. And when James Sanders come to do an interview, I was not feeling for the interview. And then he said, "Mr. Mandela instructed him to do an interview for me, help me." Then I was not sure, and I just gave him a fake interview, and he's gone with the interview, and he published it in the news, in the Mail on Sunday in London. And then a month and a half or what, then a lady came to me, visit me. She phoned me, she wanted to see me urgent. I said, "Ma'am, I'm only arrived 5:30 from Robben Island, but I don't have time really." She said, "You must just see me for 1 minute." When she see her there, she said, "Just sign the contract." I said, "What contract?" She said, "Mr. Mandela insists she must help me with my book." Then I didn't want to sign, and I phoned first the Mandela Foundation, then Vern Harris picked up, and he said, "No, Mr. Mandela, agree, you have seen the contract." So I signed the contract. From there, we was quite busy with the book. And then I made rough 3 chapters, which a lady put together to show Mr. Mandela in what direction she's going to take the book. Then he was very impressed with it. He read it. He was very happy with it. They put 4 different covers in front of him. Then on occasion, I visited him, and he said, Mr. Brand, I really like your book, but why you want a person standing with his bolted fist up? Because one of my covers is where Mandela stands in a black suit with his fist up. Then I said, "That's how I remember you. When you walked on the island, we take you out for some times to work, and your comrades scream on you, you always lift your fist and show power to the people. That's how I remember you." And then he decided to sign all 4 covers, and he said, "Mr. Brandt, I would love to see all 4 covers on the shelves." When we reported to the publisher in London, they said, "It's not possible. How can a book have 4 different covers?" Then I leave it there, and we carry on with the manuscript of the book, start writing, and then the publisher put a book on an expo out. Then on this book expo, 16 countries take the book, and it's in about 10 different languages. And so they decided to face this covers to different countries. So that some of the countries like London, UK, and Germany, and Spanish and Portugal have all the same cover. The Netherlands people have a different cover, South Africa have a different cover, and you've got a different cover. That's why my book out in 4 covers. So when my book was finalized for to be launched in last year, March, Mr. Mandela was sick again. He was up in hospital. We could have not launched the book. We delayed it, and I visited him, and he was really sick in hospital, a lot of machines and equipment on him to keep him breathing. He got a breathing problem. There was still infection in his lungs. And then we delayed it for October last year. So October, Mandela was more sick in hospital. He was really in a very bad state. So we delayed the whole thing, and the publisher don't want to go to print the book till we have an exact date. But Mandela told me on one of the visits I visited him the last, he said, "Mr. Brandt, I want to be at your book launch. If I can't be there," and then his daughter walked in and said, "Darling, can you at Mr. Brandt's book launch?" He said, "Of course, Dad, I will be there." And then it leave it there. And then Mandela passed away. I attended a funeral. Then my book launch was arranged for this year, March, in the UK. I informed the Mandela Foundation about my book launch. They know everything. And when we arrived there, and I was thinking, how are you going to preach this people? How are you going to talk about my book? It's difficult to speak to a lot of people in front of me. Then Nelson Mandela walked in and said, "Mr. Brandt, I don't hope you forget about me. I promised my daddy that I will be at your book launch, and I want to speak here on his behalf. That was my last promise I made to my father." Then I was so happy she's there and excited, and we have a conversation between us with things happened on Robben Island, and then my book launch was quite officially in London.
Fantastic. And Barbara Jones is the woman you referred to, your co-author.
Barbara Jones is the editor and the writer for the Mail on Sunday at the moment, but she was put on a special leave to help me and assist me to get the book finalized.
Great. And you mentioned that you had maintained diaries, and that was part of the sources for the book. Did you do that? Did you keep diaries just as a matter of practice? Did you recognize you were on the cusp of history? Why were you keeping diaries?
You know, in the prison, we was issued a diary every year. And I was in charge of the Mandela group from 1982 full-time. And to keep note and diarize everything happened on a daily basis. Sometimes our head office referred back, what have happened in February last year? Because we still want to know, was he at hospital, where was he, what have happened? Then I can reflect back to my old diaries. So I was just throw it in a box and keep all the old diaries over the years. So my old diaries, when I was left the prison service, I was feel there is notes in and code names in and things in about detainees and prisoners and Mandela's things. I can take out the pages and keep the pages, but I'd rather keep the whole diary, and then it works from there. And there was also personal notes, where Mandela wrote personal notes to me, which I must do this and this for him, which I also kept on the time, which was also part of this package. And there was also letters Mandela sent to me. On one occasion, sent me a letter from outside. And there was ex-prisoners like Walton McQuay, who was in Russia for a big back operation. He sent me a letter from Russia to thank me, but he sent it to the prison. And he thanked me for what I've done and how I've looked after him. Quite a human and a nice letter. And then the security branch picked it up, and I was still working in the prison service. They called me in and they charged me to have still have contact with ex-prisoners. Then I said to him, I haven't contacted this prisoner. He have wrote to me a letter to thank me for whatever. I have nothing to do with him. I never tried to correspond with him. But Mandela visited me a few times in that time, which I agree, you know, and that is how we put the book together.
Fantastic. Christo, tell us about your childhood and your thoughts today on how that childhood influenced your later life.
You know, where I grew up on a farm, I was only white child. My parents were very, very poor. In South Africa, during apartheid years, there was also very poor white people in South Africa. So we was very poor. And then my father was just a foreman for the farmer. The farmer, we didn't stay full-time on the farm. He came weekends and sometimes stay for a week. He was working in the city somewhere. He owned this farm. And then the only friends I have was the African children and the colored children I played with on a daily basis. And one day we must take the cows from the river to the kraal, and this African man have not chased it properly, and I scream on him. I think I sent a swear word to him or something, and my father hit me from a distance with a sambok, and he called me, and he give me hiding, and he said to me, you must respect that man. Even he's black, his color of his skin can't come off. We are all not look different, we are all human beings. And we must respect each other. And he gave me a whole talk about that. But on the farm, my father always invited the workers, because there was not a church on our farm, or not close to. We was about 30, so it said 15 miles away from the nearest small town. And there was no church facilities. My father, some Sunday mornings, called them in, the workers, read a piece out of the Bible, have a church service, and they will sing for us and so on. And when family visited us on the farm, my father would always invite some of them, because my father was playing violin, and they don't have somebody who can play with him. I didn't play anything. So there was this one guy playing guitar, another one playing this thing. They make music, and people could have danced. We enjoy sometimes ourselves on the farm. That's how I grow up, and respect people, not for the color of the skin, but as a human being.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, indeed. In his book, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela writes, "My father had a stern manner and did not spare the rod when disciplining his children. He could be exceedingly stubborn, another trait that may unfortunately have been passed down from father to son." Did you and Mr. Mandela ever discuss your respective childhoods and how you grew up?
One day when Mandela worked in his garden, then he asked me where I come from. Then I explained to him I also come from the farm. He said, "That's good. Can you speak the language?" I said, "A little bit I can." Then I can tell him at least there's food on the table. He was very impressed that I can speak a little bit of Xhosa, but not fluently. I can understand when people talk about me, answer back. But on the farm, we mostly speak Afrikaans. Even African people, they were speaking Afrikaans. On that certain areas, they were speaking Xhosa, Afrikaans, and so on. But he was very impressed that I come from the same background where he come from. He came from a background where he was in the rural areas. There was also white people staying in that rural areas where he grown up. They speaking all Xhosas, playing together in rivers and so on. But in the cities was oppression by one by another. Blacks was against, the whites was against the blacks, and there was really oppression. And I only seen that when we moved to the city in the later years, when I was about age of 14 to 15.
Well, and that's a great segue to my next question, actually. When did you realize how segregated your country was?
You know, when we moved to the city, that's the first time I could have not walked with African of color children to the school, but there was communities where white people stayed, the Africans were staying in different townships. We was not mixed at all where I stay. But one day when I take the train to Cape Town, and I need to go to a toilet, and I run to the first toilet and shows blacks only, the guy which was with me, a white school child with me, was my age, he said, no, you can't go in the toilet, it's only for blacks. But I said, what is it different? Do they have a different toilet system which we don't have? Because I was interested to see how their toilet looks like. It was exactly the same as ours. There was no difference that they have a different facility for toilets. So that was for me strange. And then I've seen this signs, blacks only, apartheid signs up, even on the beach, because first time I go to the beach and see the sea water, it was only white people. But I not realized, it didn't take into me, but only in 1976, with the uprising of South Africa, we was informed all our senior school children must guard the school at night. They put us out on sections for 2 hours at night. And then I asked why we must guard the school. They said, no, the blacks want to burn the schools. Then I asked the principal, that one teacher, but why blacks don't they want education? Because I don't understand why they want to burn the school. He said, no, they don't want to have education. That was his answer. And only realized later when I start working on Robben Island, what apartheid really was in South Africa, then I opened my eyes and see more things happened around me. There was, instant one prison guard who worked with me, was a warrant officer, quite a high rank before full officer. And one day visitors came from Robben Island in the waterfront in Invocation. There was a harbor district, and no people was allowed to walk there, especially women. They must get a taxi or a bus or something which collect them. And it was pouring, raining, and he was with his open bakkie, a small truck, and he told the lady wanted to lift to the station in Cape Town. He said to her, ma'am, get on at the back in the rain. She sat in the back on the bakkie in the rain. When he get out of the waterfront, there was customs that years. Immediately police was there and arrested him. And he was charged in the Immorality Act, that they have an African woman on his bakkie, because if his wife was in front in a bakkie with him, it was fine. But because he was alone with her, Immorality Act, he lost his job as a prison guard. He was sentenced for 3 months prison service, and he was just trying to help this woman. He didn't think of that at that stage because of the rain.
Well, and you talk in the book about, I think this is when you were still living in a rural area, but you talk about a couple of individuals by the name of Chocolate and Picky, and give our audience a sense of what happened to those individuals, and that apparently it was commonplace.
You know, Chocolate have a Xhosa name, very difficult Xhosa name, which I could not pronounce, a lot of clicks in it. But because he was on the farm, he always take me with his bicycle to the bus stop, sometimes where he meet up with other African children wait. He was giving me a lift, and when he get paid on Fridays, where there was a small little amount of money, he make always sure he buy some chocolates. I don't know why he was fascinated with chocolates. Always want to bring my mother also chocolate, and he always feed me with chocolates. My mother was one day telling him, you must stop feeding this child, he will get sick of all these chocolates. You know, he was really, and then we named him Chocolate, and he accepted that. But during the apartheid years, black people was from the rural areas, when they came, especially into South Africa, that is from Transkei, that they may have a pass, they call it a dom pass, a stupid pass system which was there to show them where they must walk and not walk. And then if they in this area, they were stamped and written there and stamped, they can only stay in that area, they can't move out of the area. So there was African people in our farm with dom pass, which can't leave the farm area where they stayed. But then they were supposed to go back every year, and then you get a new group coming out if you want African people on your farm. But there was African people who have children there on the farm. Then when I go back, they leave their children behind. And then they work out if they get to another farm. My father tried to apply to get them. It was a struggle to get the same families back to be with their children. My mother was sometimes looking after the small children there, because the families can't take the child in now. Then the child can come out, and then the child is registered in South Africa under the system there at the nearest police station. So Chocolate was one of these guys, didn't want to go back. And later my father made him a small hut up in a mountain, quite a distance from the house. And he come back, even in the mornings early, he come to work, he worked with us, but he walked always away from the roads where you could have seen when police vans visit us. And that year the police always phoned and said, they will be in that district tomorrow. We was in a Pappies Vlei district. They will visit that district. We must get all Africans together that they can stamp their dom pass to see that they have physically seen them. Chocolate's dom pass have expired. My father always taken them away. When the police come, he must go to his hut, he stay there till we go and call him. Somebody stand up to call him. But we don't know what happened. The police come unexpected and they remove him. My father was being charged for that, have an illegal African on the farm, and then he was sentenced for that. And the sentence was he was just 2 weeks locked away and with a fine, which he could have not paid. That's why he said 2 weeks in prison, nearly a month. He was supposed a month with a parole to have an African person on a farm. So it was so strict it was, but Chocolate disappeared totally. We didn't never know what happened to him up till today. And Pikkie was a colored guy. The families moved from farm to farm. Coloreds was more open, freely movable in South Africa than African who were not moved. And Pikkie was just left behind. As a very small, tiny boy, was left behind. The African family came to us and they said, Pikkie is there in an empty house and the parents have left overnight. Because the main farmer maybe not paid them and they decided to leave and they leave him behind. So my mother take him in our house. And when the police come, you must stay separately and you mustn't be in our house, you mustn't be seen. And Pikkie was trained like that. When police come, he's not coming in the house, we play there outside or somewhere around. So we grow up together. And we tried to found a family. We could have not never find a family. And then Pikkie was with us about more than 10, 12 years. And then I think my parents, I've never asked him really when my father died, but he take Pikkie to town and he found a family. And Pikkie was gone with him.
Yeah, good.
And today, I don't know where to find Pikkie at all.
Obviously, your story is so significant and revolves around your career as a prison warder. Tell us about your decision. Why did you decide to become a prison warder?
You know, during the apartheid years was, all white children was forced for military training. They must go to military camps, they go to the borders, been there. Then it happened that one of my best friends, which was very close to me when I came to the city for the first time, meet up with this guy. We bonded very nice. And he was a little bit older than me. And he said to me, you want to become a doctor one day. And you've got all these few things to become a doctor. You want to buy this luxury car. You want to have a good life. Everything he was living for that. Then the military called him up. And then he said, oh, there's 2 years of his time he wastes. We're going to university. And his parents who didn't have much money. They save up for him. They've got some money. We can send him to university. But he must first do his military training. Within about 3 and 4 months' time, there was a big funeral in our community where the military cannons was there. A lot of military personnel was marching. And this guy was died on the border, shot by the terrorists of the time in a shooting. And then it was very painful for me to think back. I've seen a photo with a card where we're singing in the church, and I look at his photo and I think, what 8 years he have for the life? He want to live for the life. And because of this oppression in some country, he was fighting on the borders, which was supposed to be the enemy. Then I think, I'm not going to join the army. Then my nephews refused. They sent a letter and refused. They was arrested and sent for 6 years military prison. When it come for my time, I get a letter from the army. I called up for a January intake. And immediately before that, I think, I not really want to go. I don't want to join the police force. I must go to that. And then a guy visited our school just before we finished. And they're looking for prison guards. And then I found out more about it, do research. And then I think, really, I must go. So I joined up to become a prison guard.
In your book, you talk about the intensity of the training you received as a prison warder. And you wrote, perhaps the training, was designed to give us an insight into the way prisoners felt when ordinary liberties were taken away from them. Can you elaborate on your training and how it made you feel?
During my training, also on weekends, in some days, we work at the maximum criminal prison in Kroonstad prison. And that prison was prisoners for long time sentences, was mostly tattooed faces, real criminals. I remember we was young prison guard, we was afraid when the first day we go in. The second day, one of us was being stabbed by a prison gangster now, stabbed in the border. Other one was robbed from his watch. And then they said, we must be alert, you must always watch your back. You never open a single cell alone, you must only 3 or 4 together. And they trained us how to cooperate with and work with those dangerous criminals. And we didn't have firearms with us, we just walked with a bat and stick that years in prison. But you must always be a thief when you open these big criminals. So I was trained with that. And then when I landed on Robben Island, they told us we're going to meet the biggest criminals in the history of South Africa. So immediately I think, tattoo faces, tattoo from, I found old people standing up from the floor on the mats, and they're really polite and friendly and greet me with respect. And I was thinking, where this criminal prisoners are with respect? I look at the sentences, all mostly life sentence prisoners. Then I asked the sergeant, what is this criminals in for? He said, that's a terrorist to try to overthrow our country. That was his words. Then I think, this old people can't be terrorists. A terrorist is a person who plant bombs and attack things and so on. And they're so humble. And then I start respecting and understand that my father learned me when he was young and tell me, you must respect elderly people. And with the respect, I was only 18, become 19 on Robben Island. The respect Mandela and Walter Sisulu was older than Mandela, Mabeki was more older. They treat me with that respect. I could have not been with them disrespectful at all. Even with the youngsters was arrogant who came to Robben Island, I treat them with the respect, and they was also, they didn't know how to handle this, and they tried to force their thing into prison, and then they also changed.
Well, I think it's so significant that your upbringing and your parents' guidance in teaching you respect and equal treatment really parallels what Gordon Parks learned, and I think that was really what made Gordon who he was. So I think it demonstrates to us the importance of family life and being encouraged to treat people for who they are and not what they look like.
And also with respect.
Exactly.
You know, like Gordon Parks would understand, was the same caliber as Mandela, the same 1912s, and been born during that time. And you know, people from that area, when I meet them, they was already respectful. They come from rural areas. They come with oppression and bad things. And like Mandela was studying the white people of the country, you know, and he treated us with respect.
Again, going back to his book, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela wrote, "It was always valuable to be familiar with regulations because the warders themselves were often ignorant of them and could be intimidated by one's superior knowledge." What are your thoughts about your knowledge of the regulations?
Yes, the regulations were straightforward. We not talk to this person, do instructions, instruct him to do things, beat him with his baton. There's not batons, law pieces of wood which he was walking with. And if a person don't want to listen, just beat him and you must force him to the way. Or if he still don't want to listen, we instruct and put him in single cells in chains and give him for 121 days spare diet. And spare diet was a very, very bad meal. It was porridge, maize porridge, which they throw in a bucket and then they shake it out. And there's nothing left in the bucket that he can eat, which is left. That little bit which was just stuck on the bucket, that is a breakfast meal. For lunch, the same type of thing. In the evening, you give him a half cup of coffee, bitter with no sugar. That is for 3 days. The 4th day, you will not shake all the porridge out, just a little bit. But there's still a small layer in that plate, which you can eat. That is half, we call it a half meal for 1 day. Then the 5th, that is the 4th and 5th day, we give him a full meal to upset his whole stomach at all. And then go back to the skral, we call it skral in Afrikaans, his minimized meal, which you shake everything out. We go with that too. Sometimes after 21 days, a prisoner is so pale, you must ask, the other prisoner must call him in to carry this one out because he's weak. And then it's to build up his energy and structure. And Mandela was also sentenced on occasions like that under spare diet. He was also sentenced for, well, his privileges like studies was been taken away for nearly 4 years because in his prison garden, he was have the manuscript of Long Walk to Freedom, which he wrote. He would start writing that. Then there was a guy by the name Lalu Chiba, which is still alive today. He wrote Mandela's whole page in one sentence. Very tiny, you can't read it with a normal eye, but he was right very small. And then he write, and they put it in the back of postcards which is sealed. And they will try to send this postcards out and let people not observe it. Or sometimes they wrote it in very loud, and then you will color it in with a pencil, you see the letters come out of this writing. And that was smuggled out of the country to London. When they get a message, it's saved in London at the ANC headquarters. Then Mandela will try destroying these manuscripts of him. So one day, they were still in a cell, and I opened that for criminals to come and build a wall to separate the 2 sections. When they dig the foundation, they found this tin of Mandela's manuscript, one of the tins. For that, he was sentenced 4 years, losing his studies privileges, losing his visage privilege for I think, a year, and he was also 21 days in spare diet. It was a big case against him during that time, which he was humiliated in really bad conditions was being treated.
I believe that Mandela spent 18 years on Robben Island, and tell us about that prison and tell us about the island.
You know, sorry. You know, Mandela was, they said, 18 years on Robben Island. He came 1962 on Robben Island. While he was on Robben Island for a few years in an old prison, not that maximum prison, in an old prison, he was just there for 18 months. Then they get the Ravonia, they raided the farm Lily's Leaf, where they found the manuscripts of Mandela. Then they brought him back. He was sentenced for 5 years first. Then they brought him back to Johannesburg prison, where he was charged for treason with the Ravonia trialist. And then he spent 18 years on Robben Island. But the 18 years, mostly of that 18 years was very hard labor for him. He worked in a limestone quarry, where they must go out in the mornings, 7:15, 7:30, they go out to work. after they clean their cells and inspections. They march out, then they stay the whole day there. And if people have visited Robben Island, they see this big hole into the limestone, like a hole they made inside. That is where the place where the water's chasing in to have lunchtime, because they don't go back to prison. That is also a hole where they have a bucket where they can use for toilet. And that hole, the same hole, they used to educate each other. Because there was intellectuals on Robben Island, like Dr. Neville Alexander, who is a teacher, and there was quite a lot of intellectuals between them. And they worked sometimes, harvest this limestone, they mix it with seashells, put cement to mold bricks and things to build building constructions on Robben Island. But the cement bags, Mandela will use that paper. And that he will use to help each other, to learn each other, because he didn't have books in the beginning. There was one taught another one to educate each other. And the education was one will go to toilet. And while he's in toilet, waters not go in. They guard on top the limestone quarry. Some waters in the bottom. Nobody will go into that hole to see what the guy is doing on the toilet. Then somebody else will slip through to the toilet. Then he will educate this guy, give him some assignments to do. Then he will come out. Then this guy will do. A lot of prisoners could have not write, because education for blacks was very bad during that years. There was no education for them. There was a called later in the later years, before apartheid was demolished, was called black education. And it was totally a very low-class education for them, not really education. So on Robben Island, they tried to change the place in the university to taught each other and learn each other. Mm-hmm. And then they worked in this limestone quarry, and that was the only way out of prison. Otherwise, they was isolated in their cells. They could have not really communicate, but if they work in a limestone quarry, they can communicate. The lime dust with the southeaster wind was also killing their eyes. When I was guarding on top, guarding the prisoners down there in the limestone quarry, I could have not see them. I just see a glare because of the dust blow also up in my eyes. We was not allowed to use sunglasses. Prisoners was not allowed to use glasses. The limestone burned your eyes and eating your eyes from the inside, and that caused that Mandela nearly become blind.
And it caused a sensitivity for him in later life with flash photography, did it not?
That's correct. When he was released, his security, when he became president, nobody take a photo with him with flash. They tried to stop people. You can take a photo if you don't have a flash. That was really the effect of the light.
Well, tell us about the first time that you met Mr. Mandela, and I believe you were 18 or 19, and he was in his 60s at the time. Christo, did you have any sense about the possible development of a friendship with this man? And when was it that you appreciated his significance as a human being?
You know, when I worked there, they said us we're going to meet the biggest criminals. The first time I heard the name Nelson Mandela was after 3 weeks when I was at home for a weekend. My uncle visited my father and asked, oh, you work on Robben Island? And I said, yes, I work on Robben Island. And my uncle asked, did you see Nelson Mandela? I said, I don't know Nelson Mandela. My father asked, who's Nelson Mandela? Then my uncle explained to my father. My father think, he said, but is that man not long dead or been hanged at this? He said, no, I understand he's still alive, because people in South Africa was uninformed what happened to Nelson Mandela. So when I go back after the weekend, I see on one of the bridges, under bridges, stand small was graffiti, Free Nelson Mandela. Then I think, okay, it stands here. My uncle talked about it. I must look for this man. Then I walked at Monday in a section. I was not placed on that specific section, and asked the warden at the gate, but what one in the group when he was exercising that morning before we work on the spans is Nelson Mandela. He said, the tall one who walked there with a short one, that is Walter Sisulu. Then I wait till they come around and see them by face. And then another occasion where I first talked to Mandela was an occasion, he was working in his prison garden. Then I walk there to see what he's doing. And I asked him, sorry, and he said, Mandela? He said, yes, Mandela. Oh, sir, you're a new guy here. I've seen your face here, but I don't. What is your surname? And he looked at my name badge. He said, oh, Mr. Brand is welcome here in Robben Island, because I have no time to talk to you. We was not really allowed to communicate. Then I just chat a little bit, and I asked him what he's planting. He said he plants some tomato seeds. I said, okay, that's good. Maybe I must bring you some onion seeds. He said, do you know gardening? I said, yes, I come from the farm. My father was planting tomatoes, potatoes. And he said, that's good. You can help me in my garden and give me some advice. That was the first time I really talked to the man. The other occasion when I talk to him, when I take him to a visiting location, where we walk down in front, then Mandela must walk in front of me, far in front of me, walk a prison guard, then I walk very close to Mandela, and then at the back will be a dog handler walking, and the guards will be alert. If he try to jump and try to escape, they will shoot him down. Mandela never tried that. So when we walk down, and he asked me again where he come from, explaining where he come from. He says, good. He said, Mr. Brand, are you studying? I said, not at the moment. He said, Robben Island, you must make every opportunity to study. Then I found out these prisoners of Mandela and them pressurized even their enemy. And Mandela said to me, Mr. Brand, if you study, we can understand each other better. We can communicate better. There will be a communication skill. And even the oppressors, which was during the 60s, the prison guard was employed by the SAIS, not with qualifications. They only speak Afrikaans of Dutch. And that was enforced to the prisoners. And then Mandela always tried to be convinced the prison guards to study because he know they don't have education. And he think and believed through education they will understand each other better.
What I think is so wonderful, and you make this point, is that from that time, and you were a teenager, but throughout your friendship, it was always Mr. Brand. He was always very respectful to you.
You know, I could have not believed I was a youngster. He's already like a grandpa of something to me. He was old, 60 and odd over. And he respected me as if I was his senior. With that respect, he talked to me. And I could have understand the respect because I'm a prison warden, maybe in uniform, you have that respect. But he kept that respect right through. And there was a time when we wrote a book, we were busy with the book and things. Then Ahmad Kathrada was there, which was sentenced with Mandela for life. And he's also now 85 this year. And he said, Mr. Mandela, why Mr. Brand put his book, My Prisoner, My Friend? He can't be your friend. You are two big cap difference. And he stand up and he put his arm around me. He said, he will always be my friend. Because that's how we met each other. Will always be my friend. And will always be the biggest person in my life which I have met. And you know, in some occasions he introduced me. What important person I was in his life. Let him believe that there's a world outside the prison bars. You know, he said, with my young generation, with my energy, with my friendly face in the morning, which he loved to see when I greet him friendly and always polite, he was have that respect towards me, and I treat him with the same respect.
Again, going back to Mandela's book, he wrote that men like Swart, Gregory, and Warrant Officer Brand reinforced my belief in the essential humanity, even of those who had kept me behind bars for the previous 27 and a half years. And you also write about Mandela's humanity in your book. When did you realize or appreciate that he had similar feelings about you and your humanity?
You know, when I met him, like the way he speak to me with respect, Yahweh always interested to pressurize me also in my study. He even goes so far to smuggle the letter out of prison in a chocolate bar which he sent to my wife. And my wife encouraged me, I must also start studying. And every time I said to him, not this year, because we work from 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I get 6 o'clock at home. Then I just have a baby boy at that stage, and I want to play with a child. And it was not really time for studying. I always have excuse. And after a few times my wife pressurized me to study, I said to her, you just become like Nelson Mandela now. You know, then I didn't realize that he sent a letter. But eventually I start studying. I do some things in the prison department because I want to encourage my rank. I didn't study a law degree of something to go and leave the prison service. That side, I decided to upgrade myself and to go to, because with his work with his respectable people.
What would you like for us here in Wichita, Kansas to know about South Africa?
You know, what I would love you to know is about the reconciliation process we've gone through. There was a lot of pain and suffering in our country, and I'm sure it was in your country also, a lot of pain and suffering. And people have oppressed one another. And I want to know that people mustn't do that again. And through the Reconciliation Commission, which we have, where families, their children disappeared. African families, children have disappeared, mostly African people. Children have disappeared. They didn't know what happened to them. And then Mr. Mandela and Bishop Tutu bring up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was in place. And to start that, they advertise. Any people in South Africa which have lost children, which have people who disappeared, people who have been tortured, must come forward to the Truth and Reconciliation to register their complaints. Maybe we can find your beloved ones, of even the bodies of your beloved ones. So a lot of people come forward and lay their complaints about what happened to their children have disappeared. So at the same time, white people from police officers and people from National Intelligence Security Branch officers also come forward. And they request they must come forward. They will give the people amnesty if they come and tell what happened to these people's beloved ones. So a lot of white people come forward, and they come there in this Truth and Reconciliation Commission where the family sit that side, the police guy sit on this side, and this guy stand up and he talk, and he said, I was instructed by the government of the time how I arrested this guy, where I take him to, how I tortured him, how I killed him, how I burnt his body, or where I buried him. And he explained, and he asked for forgiveness to the family. The family was furious on the other side, and then Bishop Tutu intervened and talk and go through the healing process and said, through this process we can heal the process if you can show us the body of the bones of the beloved ones. So the guy plead for forgiveness, the white guys, to the families. Then they go so far and they show out the graves where they dug hollow graves and places on where they buried some of the families. And out of that graves they identified some of the clothing. Sometimes the ladies identified their child's clothing, or maybe a note of something which was still in the pockets, because everything which was with that person they buried with him. And they identified and they digged up the graves and they reburied them. And the families accept the apology of the guys. And the truth and reconciliation give them amnesty about they don't be followed. People which didn't come forward, where families know about policemen which tortured and take their son away, they was been charged after they come out. And also later years they get some amnesty. But there was this healing process for the nation after Mandela's speech. And after the healing process was passed through Mr. Tutu, and a lot of people sit in at hearings and listen to other stories and things happening, people come closer to each other. You know, that same family who hated this white guy, they come closer to each other. They understand this guy was working for the government of the time, under instructions to oppress blacks, to hate blacks, and now he feels sorry what they have done. And they reconcile with each other, and then reconciliation was built in our country. It totally changed people's minds. And out of that process, a lot of white people which hate the blacks at that time, which said, oh, the terrorists killed my sons on the border and things. When they listened to these commissions, they said to themselves, but we never knew that was going on in South Africa. We was uninformed. People didn't inform us that the police have raped people and take people's children, kill them somewhere, whatever. A lot of white people was uninformed. It opened the white people's in South Africa's faces. And then they said, I'm sorry, because I was also racist. We must take hands and we must build this country together. That's when Mandela said, we are a rainbow nation. We must come together and build. But there will be individuals which will still have on the mind of tracks of apartheid systems. You know, when they were starting with the negotiation process after Mandela was released, there was this white group, AWB in South Africa, who wanted to change South Africa and try to win South Africa back for the right-wing whites. And they go so far and shot Chris Hani. And when Chris Hani was shot, there was nearly an uprising of black people who wanted to take revenge on white people in South Africa. And then Mandela announced on television and approached the people, he talked to his organization and the leaders and said, calm down, boys. Don't take action now, we're busy with the negotiations. And the woman who phoned and identified the guy who shot Chris Hani is a white woman, not a black woman. She wanted to show she wanted peace in this country. And the guy which was arrested was a foreigner. Jalous Walus was a foreigner. So he killed the fire before it was exploded there, or about the racial thing again. And then it was peace and freedom. And then we expected there will be problems with our elections. People was queuing for miles and miles, the long strings of queuing. There was black, white, and colored, all in the queues. They were so excited to vote. They wanted to change the country to a better, which really happened.
Well, I want to follow up on that, because when you talked about the elections, you're right. Every one of us was nurturing fears of one kind or another. It was the first time ever that white, black, colored, and Asian South Africans could literally stand side by side to share a public event. This was incredible in itself, whatever the outcome. What did that day mean to you, standing in line with your wife and with the others to vote? You know,
I would stand that day for 4 hours, nearly 5 hours in the queue. It was a long queue. But I said to myself, I must go and vote for Nelson Mandela. I will really, not even he become the president, but his organization, and have that they can also have a feeling to run the country. Because what he was fighting for, I want to vote for that, and to have peace and freedom and reconciliation in our country. You know, and for me, that standing that day in the sun was a long wait, but it was worthwhile when we made our cross. When the outcome come, we was delighted, we celebrate, we party. Not only blacks was partying, whites was partying all over, the fires was burning. And it was really an exercise in South Africa that the ANC have come into power. You know, there was maybe areas with right-wing people didn't like that, but the people was really in favor for that whole election.
Fantastic. I believe you're still working on Robben Island?
Yes. You know, after I left the prison service 1994, Mr. Mandela gave me a job offer in Parliament. So I worked in Parliament with the drafting of the new constitution because it was a historic event for South Africa where Mandela talked about the Freedom Charter to me in 1986. He just mentioned what the Freedom Charter stands for, and that's what the ANC stands for. And then when I drafted the constitution, it was exactly like the Freedom Charter was stand for. And I was very excited, and I worked with it, and it was part of the historic making of our new constitution in South Africa. And then I go so far, the interim constitution I printed. Then I think I must give Mr. Mandela one in his office. So I take one to his office. He was so excited when I give it to him. I said to him, Mr. Mandela, but can you sign mine? And he write a whole message in Afrikaans when he signed it. When I lift it up, I said, Mr. Mandela, now I'm going to bribe you. I'm going to take you now to the people and say you have adopted this constitution. They just laugh at me. And I still have that constitution at home today, which is signed specialized for me.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
And then after that, the constitution was adopted in 1996. There was a big celebration, a party where Mandela called me to the podium also and tell the people that I work now for him, where I was working in a prison service, where I know friends. And they exploited me totally to the people there which didn't know me. And then after that, the constitution was adopted, and then he gave me a job offer in the Mandela Foundation. But that was quite far out of Cape Town in Johannesburg. And then I said, Mr. Mandela, I do not really want to leave Cape Town. My family is here. I don't have family, friends, nothing in Joburg. You're the only one I knew there in the few of the comrades, which was on Robben Island. Then he think of it over again. He said, Mr. Brand, we declare Robben Island as a museum. Don't you want to work for the museum? Because we want to bring back ex-political prisoners, and we would love to have you there. Then you can work colleagues hand in hand. So I was excited, and I said, I will go any day back, not to stay on Robben Island again, because the boat is traveling up and down. So I was running the curio shops first. We have it outsourced, but I'm still in control of that. I've got a coffee cafeteria in a village shop where the villagers, which stays on Robben Island, is ex-prisoners which don't have accommodation, which come from far. Stays on Robben Island in the houses where the prison guards stay today. So we serve them from the village shop. Then I do also private tours. A lot of people came to Robben Island, dignitaries and things. And Mandela do sometimes tours, and Kathrada come. Then they want the guard also there. When a prisoner talk, we can guide him through the whole tour. So we do some private tours also.
And I believe that Robben Island has been declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And you write, it's a place of endless fascination to international tourists, historians, political activists, and anyone with an interest in South Africa's turbulent past. You go on to say, Robben Island was now one of the most important symbols of racial recognition in the world. That's an interesting sentence to me. Would you elaborate for us?
You know, and also to say Robben Island is a living museum. It's the only museum where you can go and you meet the ex-prisoners which was in that prison before. Even though some of them come very late there, but you meet the ex-prisoners which is really there. They can take you through the prison tour. And on Robben Island was also a leper colony, was also a military base. It was also Jan van Riebeeck worked there with slaves. And Xhosa's chiefs was in prison on Robben Island, which was also in prison there. And there was that things happened. And Jan van Riebeeck gets slate from Robben Island, where he built a castle in Cape Town. All the floors in the castle in Cape Town is built from slate from Robben Island. And it was just imagine how difficult it was for slaves to break the slate. How they get it on a boat, how they get it to Cape Town, how they carry it, because there were no vehicles that year. That is 1652, many years back. You know, and that is a living museum for people to come and see.
10 years after the fact, President Mandela introduced you to what you call called his formal retinue, and I don't know if this was in the Parliament or while the Constitution was being written, but he introduced you and told them about the time that you put his baby granddaughter into his arms. Obviously, this is a fantastic story, and I want you to share that with the audience, how that came about.
Yeah, the baby came about. You know, during that years, Winnie Mandela had very difficulties to visit Mandela on Robben Island. She must always apply it in advance. And we give her that permit also in advance because she was under house arrest, very bad situation where she was being kept away from her family. She was isolated alone with her 2 daughters. And later there was grandchildren also which was with her in Brandfort. When she get the permit a visit, she must apply to the court. Then the police will escort her from her house to the airport. From the airport she will be fly to Cape Town. Then she will be escorted by police again to invocation office for Robben Island. And that was winter time when she come to visit in June, July, I don't know exactly the date. But she always bring African to have traditional blankets with her, big blankets with her, wrapped herself with blankets. And then she have a coat on top of the blankets and then a handbag. She always come with that and sometimes a hat onto her. And that day when she came to Robben Island, we do only male prison guards is on Robben Island. We don't body search ladies at all. We just scan the bag inside with a hand scanner. If something goes off, we say, take out, let us see. That's all we take for bombs and things, firearms. Winnie never came with that type of things. But then, when a boat parked there, if there's prisoners must be escorted to Robben Island, we take them first out, lock them in the front hull inside the boat. Then there's an officer's cabin where the officers and their families sit. Then from there, there's a cabin where the warders and their families can sit downstairs. Then we will go and get from the waiting area the prisoners' visitors, which was all black, because there was no white prisoners on Robben Island. All the visitors was blacks of colors. We parked them on the outside top deck, and the guards will say, that's the only place you said, you not move. And they watched them the whole time, positioned them there, they did not move. And it was raining, it was bad weather conditions, rough seas, the sea spray on top of them. Winnie always protect her about that. When she get on the island and get off the boat, the weather have lifted a little bit, and the sun came down through a little bit. Then she take this jackets and things off because it was wet. When we observed, she got a baby infant with her. And children was not allowed to be seen by prisoners. Mandela will say it in his long walk to freedom, when they walk in a limestone quarry and they heard children playing in the bushes, that was the children of the guards. They all start keep quiet just to concentrate to hear the excitement and voices of children. They was hungry for children. So when he came with this child over to Robben Island, and when I've seen the baby, I said, ma'am, you're not allowed to take this baby into the visiting room. It causes problems. You must leave it with other visitors while you have the visit in the visiting location. And she was begging us, please, if you can just show him, or if you can show him on the distance. I said, we can't, ma'am. Then when it's her time for a visit, she was sitting in the visiting box. The visiting box is a small cubicle where one person can sit. Then there was a window, which is a A4 size of paper. It's a double glass with a panel in between, which you open with a lever. And you can even scream, but the person on the other side can't hear because it's soundproof. And then we park Mandela on the other side, and then you switch on the mic, and they speak on a telephone to each other. And always when that panel opened, Mandela will stand up and he put his hand, and he will give a kiss on the glass, as if he kiss his wife, and she will do the same. And sometimes after the visit, the lipstick will still on the glass. You know, so they will kiss each other, greet each other if could have touched. And then Mandela always take his notes out. He's got a small note always kept with him. When you want to discuss family matters, you want to discuss his studies issues, you want to discuss things which he can discuss, because visits were very strict. If he even discuss another prisoner, visits been stopped. If the second time stopped, the visit is cancelled. Mandela was very careful to discuss not other issues about prisoners. So when we need talk from that side, she know if she talk about uprising in South Africa, if anything which stopped, then Mandela's visit is cancelled. She's not allowed to talk about any situations in South Africa. But there was ways and means how they communicate and get it through. Then she told Mandela that she had brought his grandchild to Robben Island. Immediately looked to me, said, and then I knew Mandela already for a time. And he looked at me and he said, Mr. Brand, is it possible just to see the baby through the glass on a distance? Then he said, Mandela, regulations permit you not allowed to see a child. Sorry, I can't do that. Then you could have seen he was not happy, he felt a little bit sad, but he carried on with his conversation. Then the warrant officer walked in, he said, 5 minutes left. Then I said, Mandela, 5 minutes left. We heard the warrant officer, he said, Mr. Brand, please ask your superior if he can just show the baby because he knows higher rank. I called the warrant officer, I asked him what Mandela's request is. He said to me, Brand, if you can get hold of that baby without Winnie Mandela, no, we can show him the child. Because he knew Mandela already a few years, he knew Mandela can keep a secret. And then my answer was no. And then the window closed and the microphones are switched off. We take the other prisoners out and Mandela last. And when Mandela stand up, he wanted to put his book back in his seat. And he asked me, Mr. Brand, sorry for ask you a favor. Can you just pass a message to my wife that she must apply for Christmas Day to visit? And that was July, and she must apply now 6 months in advance. The warrant officer overheard. He said, no, rather bring his wife back that he can explain himself. Otherwise, Winnie won't turn up for December. Then he will take it to his lawyers, and his lawyers will fight us, and then they want a visit in January, a double visit, which is not allowed. So I said, Mandela, sit down, I will call your wife back. So I go to the site of Winnie Mandela, and she just received the baby, of cleaned the baby, which you get from the other visitors, and the baby was half asleep. And I look at her, and I look at the situation, there's nobody take the baby. And I said, ma'am, can I hold the baby? I never touch a black child. She pushed the child in my arms, and she take immediately a handbag and open a purse. I said, ma'am, I don't want your money. She take out 200 rand. My salary was not even 100 rand a month at that stage. And she have 200 rand, which people gave her for traveling and so on. You want to give me 200 rand? I said, ma'am, I can't take your money. I'm not allowed to show you. I will hold the child, but Mandela will just give you a message for 1 minute. That moment when she's in, I locked her in. I get to the side of Mandela, and then Mandela passed his message. The warrant officer closed and switched off the microphone, and he switched by accident off the light, where it's so dark where Winnie not even can see her hands in front of her. And that moment I was in a passage, and Mandela see me. He walked straight to me. He take the baby out of my arms, and he kissed. And when he kissed, you can see the tears coming out of his eyes. He kissed the baby twice on the cheek. And I was afraid the baby will scream and get awake. And that time Winnie knocked on the door because she was locked in. And I take the baby out of his arms, but he held back and let go. And then he just said thanks, and I get through to that side, open the door for Winnie and apologize that she's locked in. I'm sorry. I gave her the baby, and she's still begging me if I can show him the child, which I said I can't. When she get to the mainland, the media don't have access to Winnie Mandela much. And always they're waiting for her. And when she get off the boat, they want to capture her where she has visited her husband, Robben Island. Maybe there's some message. Then she told the media first that she has smuggled this infant to Robben Island, but not be able to show Mandela on distance. When we walked back, I was feeling strange inside my body. How can this man be hungry for a child? Always my father said when our children play in the house, you must go and play outside, the adults is talking. Try to get us out of the way when they have a conversation. But here Mandela wanted that child, is hungry for a child. I could not believe it. Only in later years I realized that because he was neglected his own children, because he was mostly exiled underground, away out of the country, fled, and then he was sentenced for life, he'd never see his own children. That's why he was so hungry for children.
Fantastic. Well, in that regard, you and President Mandela both experienced the loss of a son. You write very candidly about your own pain. What did Mandela do in support of your family's grief at that time, Christo?
You know, when my son died that night in a car accident, the next morning, I was on the way to identify his body. And then I get a phone call from Nelson Mandela. I don't know who informed him or whatever informed him, but his information was so correct. And he said to me, Mr. Brand, I feel very deep sorry that you have lost your son. And he explained me then immediately how he lost his son when he was in prison, how he bad get the message. And he said to me, a parent mustn't lose a child. Child must rather lose a parent. And he had a long conversation with me. It took more than a half an hour, and my cell phone died out. And I could have not communicate further. And I was so pleased that he recognized my son, because he was the one who gave my son a scholarship. He was the one who see how my son do the diving construction on Robben Island, and was very fond of my son. And my son was one of the first babies he have touched when he was a prisoner. His grandson was first, and then my son in 1985 was my son. And then he was like that. And then the funeral was 3 days later. Then Ahmed Kathradra, which was written my forward of my book, Barbara Hogan, which was in prison also for 18 years for terrorism, a white woman. And there was a lot of members of parliament, even Mandela's advocates and lawyers and things which defend him over the years, was all there. The church was full. My church is in Afrikaans of Dutch. And when this priest see, yes, other people in the church, black people, Indian people, he decided to go over automatically in English. And we sing some of the songs in Afrikaans and he mix it up that everybody could understand. And there was really, the people was really there for me. And also for my son, which some of them know my son very well. So then after that, the next day after the funeral, when everything was quiet, then I get a phone call. Mandela said, Mr. Brand, I'm on my way to your home. I want to come to the funeral tomorrow, when there's a funeral. I said, Mandela, the funeral was yesterday. He said, but still I want to be with your family. So he made a turn, he visited my family for very short, and there was other people, and then he left. Then he said, we must come the next day to drink tea with him. He wanted to talk to me and my wife and my other son. So we go there, we sit with him, and we spent for nearly a whole afternoon with Mandela. And he was just encouraging, talking us through how bad it is to lose a child. We must be positive. Everything in life works out with something to the better, maybe. And, you know, and it was really good to accommodate us. And that's how he explained me about my son.
Just amazing, just amazing. And you've mentioned a couple of times, Christo, the various languages in South Africa, the Afrikaans and English, and I believe Mr. Mandela's language was Xhosa. You talk about his first speech when he came out after his incarceration. And and this was so powerful to me that after starting in English, he then spoke to the people of the Western Cape in Afrikaans, then in Xhosa, his own language, and finally back in English again. In my heart, I felt so proud. I could hardly speak, and there were tears in my eyes. Here was my prisoner, and I knew he was soon to be my leader. What did that mean to your country when he made that effort to address all populations in their native language?
Let me first tell you, when you speak in Afrikaans, he starts with Afrikaans first. I feel very proud that he could have speak the language of the enemy of the country. The white people was the enemy, and that language was Afrikaans. What Mandela would do while he was in prison, he was studying the white Afrikaner, their behavior and their traditions and everything. He tried to make a point to understand them. He tried to learn their language. And there was also a time when he wrote his LLB degree, he wrote in for practical Afrikaans, which he failed for nearly 3 years in a row. He never could have passed it. He came to me, asked me, Mr. Brand, please, you must assist me with this Afrikaans. Never speak to me English anymore now while I'm studying. Then, that time was a privilege, he can get newspapers. He enrolled to Afrikaans newspapers, tried to read Afrikaans. That was not enough. Then I said to him one day, we must practice your writing in Afrikaans. And he's got a diary, dictionary with him. I said, write me your first day on the beach. And I said, I want plus minus 500 words. That's why I learned on school. And he goes and sit and he wrote me an essay. My first day on the beach on Robben Island as a prisoner. And he started writing. It was a lengthy thing. I just, when I received it from him, I counted top row, counted rows down. I said, Mandela, there's about nearly 4,000 words. I'm not going to read this thing at all. You must rewrite this whole thing for me, and plus minus 500 words. You must condense the whole script. He was so not feeling happy, but then he started with never effect, and he started writing. Then I read it, I could have not really understand it, not making sense. It is like it changed English direct to Afrikaans, which not make sense. You can't do it. So I take it to a principal school near us, and I ask him, we've got the African prisoner, I don't say Nelson Mandela, he didn't even knew Nelson Mandela, the African prison. I must help him with his Afrikaans. He was right. Then he started marketing. He said he can't even give him -3 out of 10 for this because everything is wrong. And he wrote it in red and gave Mandela back. And he studied how this language has been written. And so he wrote a lot of essays like that, which I take to the school and become better and better and better. And he later speak Afrikaans also better and understand the words. If you pronounce a word which is wrong, I said, Mandela is wrong. You must say it so and so and so. He said, we must rectify him. We must be afraid to rectify him because we want to learn. So through that, he practiced Afrikaans. He learned the language of the enemy. He learned their culture. And when he walked out that day, he know the Western Cape was 90% of 80% Afrikaans people. There's Xhosa people, English people. And he was on the podium. He greeted people in Afrikaans. He started speaking Afrikaans, which made me very proud. Then he speak English to accommodate the English people, which mostly also white. Then he speak his own home tongue, Xhosa, which he announced to his own people. And that was changed the people's views. I remember the next day a white person said to me, he could have not believed Mandela can speak Afrikaans. It was for him so powerful when he approached the people and talked Afrikaans. He was sitting and listened to that. And it changed the people's minds already from the first day out, you know. And then the day after, that was the Sunday, and the Monday, he phoned me that day. He said, Mr. Brand, thank you for what you have done through my life. I will never forget you. And he thanks me again, and he said, he's going back to Johannesburg. And I said to him, I feel very proud you can speak Afrikaans. He said, of course, you will learn me. And I must now acknowledge your language first. So that was...
Well, I'm going to again break from my prepared questions and what you mentioned there, and Mr. Mandela calling you to thank you, and a gentleman from the office or from the audience, while we were waiting to begin, asked you, how does it feel to have such a significant role in history? And I guess I'd repeat that question because clearly, if nothing about other than helping Mr. Mandela with the language, you clearly did have an impact on him, and he had a huge impact on South Africa and our world. How does that make you feel?
Feel me very proud that I could know a person like Nelson Mandela. You know, I seen him as a human being. There was days which he get cross also. He was not a perfect person which don't things wrong. There was days he was wrong, where Walter Sisulu rectified him on his mistakes, and he accepted his mistakes, he's wrong. You know, he was a human being, but for me, I was very proud to see this man. And you know, during that years, I just bring something else in which you maybe not mentioned there, but When Mandela was being taken to hospitals, I was on a lot of occasions where it was his knee operation, his ankle operation, a gland at his back operation, on his prostate operation. Every time there must be a guard inside theater. And then everybody look at each other because nobody wants to be in theater, they don't like blood. And I grew up on a farm where my father slaughtered animals. And I was thinking, I will go into the theater and stand there. And I was interested, and I asked the doctor, why he burn it here and cut there? And the doctor explained me the whole time when I was inside. And there was one occasion where Mandela came out. After test on his prostate came out, and he was busy in a recovering room. And then the captain was in charge, was there. He must send a report to Pretoria that Mandela is still alive after he recover. But Mandela don't want to wake up. And he starts slapping him. He said, cover, like a swear word on him. We are killing you. You are busy. We're going to kill you. We're going to kill you. We're going to choke you. We're going to murder you. Try to wake him up. And Mandela, And he tried to get her out. And I was feel so bad and cross with this guy. Treated this man like so bad, you know. And then after that, Mandela recovered a little bit. And he said, Mr. Brand, can you please help me? I want to urinate. And I never help a person to urinate at all. So I help him, hold him up straight. I lift up and I take the bottle and I lift, I put, let it in, do his thing. And then I lay him down and then he thanked me for that, what I've done. He never expects somebody will help him with this because he really, his bladder was full at that stage. And so we become very closer, you know, very, very close. And like I said, for me to look after a person like that, it was not a friend. It was more like a father to me. Yeah. I was the father, not a friend. Because after 1986, my father passed away. He became like, he gave me advice. He helped me with a motorcycle accident. He helped me through a lot of things. And when I have problems in prison department to put up certain things, he helped me. You won't believe that there was a time when we must record him. But our national intelligence of our head office went after the visit, immediately a short script of what he was discussing at the visit. For me to write a small script was a little bit difficult. I must listen to the whole thing. I asked Mandela to do that for me. He just rewrite it for me, but I said it to Pretoria. Then it was exactly what they have discussed. I take his notes.
That's funny.
You know, he helped me also as one way as he's a warder.
Well, you've mentioned, made reference to President Mandela always wanting to learn and always studying and improving himself. And you also talk in the book about he was a bit of a fitness nut, always working out and doing some exercise. But you suggest that he might also have been a little bit vain about his appearance. Well, you want to talk a little bit about how he took such pains to how he looked?
You know, how he looked?
Yes. You mentioned that he would do the for the hair.
Okay, the hair painting. Okay, what happened with the hair painting is a whole exercise. During that years, prisoners was allowed to buy small luxuries. It depends on your grade. If you're an A grade group, of a B group, of a C, of a D group, you start as a D group prisoner. But Mandela was already A group of his behavior over the years. He never, only that 4 years he left for studies, lose his group. But it was A group, so he was entitled. And the only hair oil which was in prison was blue Pantene with oil. And Mandela always put that on, that hair have a shine when he go to the visit. Always would put Pantene. And that specific year, blue Pantene, because of sanctions, was phased out in South Africa. We could have not found it. And I informed him, Mandela, I can't find. Then he was not happy, and he tell his wife, Winnie, to look for blue Pantene for him somewhere else. Winnie Mandela decided to take and tell Helen Schussman. And Helen Schussman was in Parliament, and she take it up in Parliament, and then the commissioner, head office of the prison services, they called me into the commanding officer's office. He said, you take this government vehicle now, and you find Mandela's hair painting. You don't come back to work till you found the hair painting. So I drive from pharmacy to pharmacy, and I found 4 bottles, which Mandela paid for. And then the others tease him and joke him about the blue Pantene. You know, he got his Pantene. But on his 80th birthday, I was specially invited to go and surprise Mandela on his birthday and take him a present. Then Kathrada arranged a blue Pantene from America somewhere. The 4 bottles in a box in a big cart. So it was been issued to go there in a media stand with a lot of cameras there, and they broadcast it to 40 countries direct. When Mandela come out, he see me, he just throw up his arms, and he greet me, welcome, and I said, I bring you blue Pantene. I understand you run out. And then they called me in the newspapers, I'm the Pantene president. So taking his blue Pantene. And then I asked him, you still use it? He said, of course, Mr. Brand, I will use it till the day I'm dying. Because I fall in love with this hair oil. It softened my hair, give a little bit of a shine in my hair because of the limestone made also his hair a little bit faded, you know, that's bring a little bit color back. So I was really enjoyed the blue painting. That's why we bring him his blue painting.
And going back to the appearance, earlier today you had talked about how he cared for his clothes and would use a special method to iron his clothes. Tell the audience about that.
You know, in prison's not allowed to have electrical equipment. But I will give you two super things. And Mandela must iron his clothes. And one day he stand for inspection. I asked him, Mandela, how you get you so nicely with the seams is so nice and everything is so nicely ironed. How you get ironed this? He said, Mr. Brand, we get coffee in the morning, which is extremely hot from the stove, from the boilers. It's extremely hot. We can't even drink it. Then I put a cardboard on top of it to seal it inside the heat. Then I will put my clothes on my floor and I sprinkle it with water and I will iron it with this. It takes me sometimes 3 days, but my clothes will be ironed for my visit. You know? So he ironed his clothes with this water.
At some point in time, you considered leaving the prison service as a warder, as a guard. And it's my understanding, you tell the story that Mandela influenced you not to make that decision at that time.
That's correct. You know, I get a job offer by the Department of Bantu Administration. That is now Black Administration in South Africa, where you work in the townships to go and look for all the blacks who are staying in different areas. Then you look at their dompos and stamp and sign and write their name down to see if they mustn't be deported back to the Transkei. And the salary was extremely high, 3 times more which I get as a prison guard. So I was thinking of the opportunity to do that work. And at first I discussed it with Mandela. He said, Mr. Brand, we will really be painful to lose you. But you also be worried about you, because in that, it was not always blacks like the white people in the township. You can be killed there. We not really want to lose you. You were such a nice person with us. You was really one of us here. But to lose you will be very painful. And then I rethink it and I come to him. I said, Mandela, I'm not going to take the job. He said, thank you, Mr. Brand. I was praying that you're not taking this job. He was hoping you not take it. So I decided to stay because they really want me there. They want to see my face. And they said, by that time I was already become a sergeant. And I've got a little bit more rank and I've got more authorities to approve certain things. And so we were very closer to each other also at that time. So I decided to stay.
And the rest is history. What would you tell our audience, or maybe what can you tell our audience about Winnie Mandela?
You know, Winnie Mandela was a very open person. She was a person who kept Mandela alive for 27 years in prison, while people didn't know the Mandela much in South Africa. She was the one who was the police tried to kill her, push her over a bridge in a car accident. There was a few attempts on her life. She was under house arrest. She was under banning orders. She was going for a lot of hell and pain to have Mandela keep his name alive in prison. She was the one who supported Mandela for 27 years. But Winnie was a very person, when she get to the prison, she didn't make a point. She will fight and argue with the warders. And I always try to calm her down, speak nicely to her and said I will take the message for him. And because I could have not allowed her to see him on some occasions, I said, I can't allow this visit. It must come through our head office. And I tried to, but she didn't want to listen to that. She was sometimes rude to me. And you know, she was the first one after Mandela's release to come and apologize for her rudeness over the years. And she was very hugged me, and she even wrote a small script for on a book which I was at a book launch for Hunger for Freedom. But Winnie Mandela was a person who kept Mandela really alive, that I can say. She was a person who take Mandela's name forward. And I feel very sad and disappointed the day when I heard the divorce. But I've seen that come. She was full of energy and energetic. Mandela was already old. When he came out, she didn't want to sleep with him. Because after 27 years to reunite with your husband is a difficult thing. To kiss each other's, hug each other's fine, but to form a family again is a little bit difficult. And she neglected Mandela on a lot of occasions. So the organization have called him back and closer. Then Mandela was standing with her with a Stompie trial and a lot of trials she was involved with in court cases after his release. And then a divorce came. And what I was feeling also very bad now when Mandela passed, he didn't give recognition in his will for her. That he recognized her for 27 years. She was really his wife, you know, and look after his kids, bring up his kids. Even they divorce and give her all the money she wants and whatever, he should have just recognized in the will and said, you've got extra stereo house to stay there. That should have been a very pleasure for me to see that. But we're in touch with each other still now. I'm in touch with Zinzi Mandela. Mandela he come and hug me on the funeral. They all come and greet me. And then I asked Mandela, do you still remember me? Because I know him from a boy of 9 years old at that stage. The family is really like me a lot still today. They didn't talk bad about me. They only say good things. Even there was times where I said, I can't allow them to visit. Because authorities, was the approval of authorities, we can't allow visits. But they know I was doing my best in my ability, which I can help in the family.
Well, what I've seen and what I've read, I'm not certain that anybody should be able to ever speak poorly about you. I'm watching the clock, and I've got 1,000 more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time and the audience's time. But I want you to tell the story of I think he was an 8-year-old boy that was brought into the prison and accused of murder, and how you and Mr. Mandela, what you did.
You know, it happened that I worked night shift in charts. Then a lot of prisoners came into prison. When we sort out the prisoners, we said juveniles first, this side, old remands, old people which regularly go to court, this side, sentenced prisoners, this side, and new remands, we call it new ones, which came in for the first time now, this side. Then we split him up in sections. Then I identified a boy. He was about, I can't say he's 9 years old, but he was small, a small boy. And I see this boy, and when we take the juveniles to the sections, I feel this boy not fit in with the others. He's too small. He's very small. And I see he's in for murder. So I put him in a single cell, and later that evening I decided, but I can't leave this boy alone in a single. I look for other 2 small ones which can fit in with him, let him not be feeling alone in the cell, because the first time he's in prison. Then the next morning I worked day shift, and I decided and opened the section. I go to the criminal section. I said, I want to see this boy. The boy must come with me. I take a walk with him, and I walk with him into Mandela's cell, but I say nothing about the boy to Mandela. When Mandela see the boy, he said, oh, you bring me a visitor. It's nice to have him. And who is he? Then I said, no, he's a prisoner. He said, Mandela, a prisoner? I said, yes. And I tell the boy, give me your prison ticket in his pocket, and he gives the ticket. Mandela read in for murder. You look at him, and he starts speaking to the boy. And the boy explained to Mandela, in the area where he was is a gangster area. Then the gangsters come, take his family, and said they're going to rape his mother, and they're going to do this, kill his father, if the boy must go and shoot that uncle opposite the street in the other house. It was a gangster-related thing. So the boy knocked on the door, and he asked the lady to speak to Uncle so-and-so. When the uncle come, he shoot him. 3 shots with a gun. Then he ran away, and the police arrested him for the murder. So the boy was in court. They didn't place him out to the family because that will happen again. They kept him, sent him to prison. He must be isolated. Mandela was very shocked about this boy, and he said, no, this boy can't sleep tonight in this prison. Phone my Advocate Dalla Omar. He's a closet in Cape Town. Phone him. He must urgently come and see this boy. I want him out of prison today. You don't want to see this boy. You must make some plan. So I phoned Dalla Omar. I said Mandela's instruction. Immediately he react. Take the boy's particulars, names, and he's gone to court. They come back with a court order, and the boy is released under his supervision, which he put with the family away from their townships. And then after that, I never asked Dalla Omar what happened to the boy. I never asked Mandela. I know Mandela was with his lawyers in contact to helping this boy again, to stay out of the trouble and get him off the case or whatever. And that's what happened. He always helped others too.
Yeah. When Mr. Mandela was diagnosed with tuberculosis in 1988, he was treated at Constantiaberg Mediclinic, and as I understand it, was the first black patient ever to be admitted there. And understandably, the nurses perhaps were a little reluctant or didn't know how it was going to go. Describe his interaction with the four nurses that had been selected to care for him.
You know, when Mandela was identified with tuberculosis, he was first in another hospital, Tygerberg Hospital. Then from there, we transferred him to recover for another 3 weeks in Constantia Mediclinic to recover. And they isolated a whole section where he was kept. There was guards on both sides, and a lot of guards was in place around that whole hospital. So there was only 4 nurses and a doctor allowed to interact with him. And the nurses was always in and out, and there was always a guard present when he talked to the nurses, what he talked and what he discussed. The nurses was a little bit nervous in the beginning, but later they loved to help Mandela in that situation, you know. And after Mandela was been taken out of that hospital, then he moved to Verster. Then he insists he want to send chocolates for that nurses. And I get the instruction, I must take his money from his property. I buy nice sized boxes of chocolates, wrapped it nicely, and a card, and I take it to Mandela, and he's writing. And thanks to them for the help they gave him and assist him while he was in hospital, and for their patience to look after an old man like him. They put it nicely in a letter, and then Pretoria approved that, and I take it to the different sisters. I phoned when they're all there, and I issue them the chocolates. They was totally delighted. They could have not believed that this person have sent them chocolates. You know, and many years later, which is not in my book, I met one of the ladies again on the road, and she said she still has the card of Nelson Mandela with his writing. She never knew this man will become the president one day. So excited she was. And you know, I walked one day in the bookshop when my book was launched in Cape Town. I just bring something up. And I walked in there with Mrs. Kellerman. I used to buy books from her for Mandela studies. And she said, Mr. Brand, you won't know what happened to me. I was unpacking my storeroom the other day, and I found a letter where Mandela applied to buy a book from us. And that was already in the 70s. He wrote this letter. And she even framed it now in a bookshop.
Fantastic. As towards the later part of his incarceration, he was transferred to a couple of different facilities and ended up at Verster prison. And I just love this story. And this prison is about an hour from Cape Town, as I understand. And tell us about when you took him through the house and into the bedrooms and into the kitchen.
You know, that night we was transferred away from the hospital. We put the security at the gates. We take him out at a fire escape in a car, and we left. The security stayed the whole night there. The next morning, the nurse wanted to walk in to give Mandela his tablets. Then, that evening, already late, it shows on television, Mandela is transferred to Wichita State prison. She didn't watch TV, she was working in hospital. She went and greet Mandela, then he disappeared. They were shocked to see he's gone, as a got an empty place. But when we walked Mandela in, all what he take with him was his radio. That time he already have radio. He's got no clothes, nothing with him. Just in his prison pajamas, which was in hospital, walk with that into the house. We open the door and walk in. We take him first to the bedroom with a king-size bed there. And we said, Mandela, this is your room. And he looked at the bed and he said, yo, it's too big for me. And the room is also too big for me. Then we said, you can open the cupboard. And he was shocked to see there's a bathroom in the cupboard. He walked into the cupboard into a small bathroom. He couldn't understand it. We take him further. He said he will rather put his radio in this smaller room with a single bed because he must still get used to this environment, the house. So we walked to the kitchen, and then we show him the kitchen, show him the sitting room, everything. And when he walked in the kitchen, he asked, but why we have a TV in the kitchen? Because he didn't know much about TVs. Just get TVs 85. Why if there's a TV in the kitchen? We said, no, it's a microwave. Then he was shocked. What is a microwave? We said, it's an oven. We put a glass of water in, we punch it there. We said, feel it's hot. I was so surprised. After that, he used the microwave quite often. He just pressed 2 buttons and warm up water. Mandela never drink cold water out of the tap all the years. Must be hot water. And so he was surprised to see a microwave. He never knew about such a thing as a microwave.
Yeah. You were not present when Mr. Mandela walked out of that facility safe and free, but I understand that you watched it on television. What were your feelings with your long history with this man and your knowledge of him and who he was and what he was? What were your feelings when you saw him leave prison?
My feelings were so excited to see him walk out. But I was so worried what's going to happen outside that gate if people are not going to shoot him down. Because there's rumors they want to kill him when he walked out of prison. I was very worried about his own safety, you know, and then when he walked down and he get into the car and he fled off, and I was very happy. But you know, I was at a meeting after that where Mandela was present, the release committee, and I was also part of the release committee where we planned all these things for his release. Then things come up there where Mandela was fled with this car. The police was supposed to escort Mandela, and then the car go the wrong direction, the police go in the wrong direction, and people all, there was a mix-up story that day. They fled with Mandela, then they wait for Mandela at the Grand Parade. He was supposed to go straight there, but he don't turn up. Because when they come with a car there, it was so blocked, they can't come in with a car with Mandela. They was afraid. Then there was an actor from America, I can't recall what the actor was, and he was also coming in with a car. They even turned the car around with him inside, and then he get hurt in the car. This actor, they jumping the car, and they take the cars away to open the road for Mandela. So this guy who drove Mandela, he was taking Mandela then to Dala Omar's house. He's an advocate of Mandela. There's nobody at home. They all rush for the Grand Parade. Then they take it to the University of Cape Town, to Professor Mampele's house. She's not there. Then he drove off to other professor's house. He's also not there. Then he drove down to other family members, but nobody is there. All of them is to the Grand Parade to see Mandela. Then he decided to take Mandela to his mother's house. They've got keys to go in. So he go into the house. Now there's no cell phone communication. Trevor and Manuel and a whole lot to guard Mandela. Don't know where to find Mandela. They run around. They don't know what is going on. They don't know where to find Mr. Mandela disappeared. And they're shocked. What happened? Nobody knows what direction he's gone. They take him a small car away. Then this guy get a police van in front of his house, and he called the police on the radio. He must call on the radio. Traffic cops of close to the parade to try to get Trevor Manuel to the radio. Then the police get hold of Trevor Manuel. Then they speak on the radio. Then Trevor Manuel said, okay, we must come in from the back. So they come in from the back and brought Mandela up. When Mandela wanted to read his speech, we were so proud, he could have not seen. He forget his glasses where he left when he was released. So he looked around, and Walter Sisulu's wife was there, and he borrowed her glasses, the lady's glasses, and it was also not so good for reading for him at that stage, but he could have read his speech. And he was sitting the whole Saturday night to work out a proper speech, how he going to approach the people. He didn't know really what to see. And then he approached the people with that message.
It's my understanding on his second day of freedom when he was released, Mr. Mandela had his lawyer call you to tell you that you were in his thoughts. That had to be a significant moment for you.
Yes, Mandela phoned me the next morning. He was with Bishop Tutu's house. And then he phoned me from there and he said, Mr. Mandela, Mr. Brand, I thank you for your humanity over the years you have done. I will never forget you. You will be always in my thought. And like I sit here, I think about your situation because we will really miss you. And I said, Mandela, you mustn't miss us. You must enjoy life outside. You will be free now. I asked, where are you going to? He said, no, he's going to his house in Johannesburg. Then I said to Mandela, you really want to leave South Africa? He said, what do you mean, Mr. Brand? I said, if you look around you, you see the beautiful mountain, Table Mountain. You see the beaches around you on the water, seawater. But in Johannesburg, it's mine dumps in a flat. There's no sea. He said, Mr. Brand, you're correct, but I must go home. So do we see off.
Well, Christo, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I want to leave the audience with the very last paragraph of your book, which I think is so moving. And you talk about Mr. Mandela's funeral and his coffin being carried past the mourners. And you did not reach out to touch the coffin as it went by, but you said, it was enough to know that our lives had touched for so many years. I said a silent goodbye to the best, strongest, and most honest human being I have ever known. Christo Brand, thank you.
Thank you.